Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having us today. Just a quick summary of where AdAlta is up to right now. As Tim mentioned, we're a drug discovery and development company. Our mission in life is to create therapeutics that improve the health of our patients. And we do this using our iBody platform, which is our drug discovery tool. And we believe this is a novel way of creating therapeutics against targets that traditional antibody approaches have struggled with. We've so far created 4 assets from that platform, 2 that we wholly own in the field of fibrosis and inflammation. The lead asset is AD214, which has completed phase 1 clinical studies and is being prepared for phase 2 in a disease called idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And we've just started discovery on our second target in that same space. And then we have 2 co-development collaborations with other biopharmaceutical companies. The first is with GE Healthcare to develop novel PET imaging agents for immuno-oncology. That's as a preclinical stage asset. And the final one is a collaboration with Adelaide company Carina Biotech to develop iBody-enabled, what we call CAR T cell therapies. And this is at discovery stage. So with 4 programs in the pipeline, this is double what we had a year ago. We are continuing to build out that pipeline because every asset is additional value. We're aiming to have 10 programs in various stages of development by 2023. And to progress that, we just completed a $3.75 million placement just before Christmas with a $2.2 million entitlement offer running at the moment, closing on the 31st of January. So that's the nuts and bolts of who we do, but really to get a handle on how we create value, it's useful to think about what impact we're having on healthcare. What benefit are we providing to our customers who are, while ultimately are a patient, ultimately in the near term are pharmaceutical companies who are going to license or co-develop assets with us. And there are 4 areas we're thinking about today. Firstly is the realization that antibodies actually can't do everything. They revolutionized pharmaceuticals 30 odd years ago when they arrived, but there are still a whole bunch of drug targets that they've struggled to provide the same degree of specificity and impact on. And iBodies are specifically designed and focused on those areas where antibodies have struggled. The second area we're working on is idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. This is a degenerative and fatal disease with no good therapies today. And we have a first-in-class, means a new mechanism of action to meet a desperate need for new approaches to this debilitating disease. The third area of impact is in immuno-oncology. So, these are the checkpoint inhibitor drugs. Many of you may be familiar with, Jared Roughhead and Ron Walker, who successfully battled cancer for extended periods of time, still surviving in Jared's case. Through these new immuno-oncology drugs. The problem is that only 20 to 40% of people respond, and our collaboration with GE Healthcare is designed to create an imaging agent that can help us work out who those responders are much earlier, get them onto the right drugs much faster, and improve outcomes. And then finally, we're working on CAR T cell therapies. These have revolutionized treatment for patients with blood cancers who failed multiple lines of chemotherapy. What we're trying to do with Carina Biotech is create iBody-enabled CAR T cells that offer the same hope for patients with solid tumours. Now, I'd love to talk about all 4 of these areas, but we don't have time for that today, so I'm just going to focus on fibrosis and on our CAR T program. So this slide talks a little bit about what fibrosis is and what we're hoping to do. Fibrosis is scarring. So this is the creation of scar tissue, usually in an internal organ. And you can imagine when that happens in a lung, as you can see in the top panel here. Normal lung is a very open airway structure, so you get lots of gas exchange, oxygen and carbon dioxide. In a diseased or fibrotic lung, you see that open architecture is totally destroyed. And that results in significantly reduced lung function. And this is a response to inflammation and injury that gets out of control, and the body keeps laying down scar tissue. In the case of lung fibrosis, it's a progressive disease. What we're trying to do with AD214 is to reduce or slow that progression of fibrosis. So the bottom panel shows the impact of treating a mouse model of fibrotic lung disease with AD214. The left picture is a normal mouse lung. The middle picture shows a fibrotic lung, and the purple staining now is collagen, which makes scars stiff and pull. And the right picture shows a much more normal tissue architecture after treatment with AD214. And the next slide talks a little bit about our lead indication, which is idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. This is a progressive, degenerative and fatal disease that kills most people less than 4 years after diagnosis. There's a $3 billion market today driven by 2 drugs that don't work particularly well. They slow progression but don't stop it, and they have debilitating side effects that prevent people continuing with therapy for more than about 12 months in many, many cases. This area is an orphan disease, what's called an orphan disease today. Unfortunately, as a result of COVID, it may no longer be an orphan disease because we now know that long COVID or severe acute respiratory distress syndrome leads to or is partly implicated with large incidence of fibrotic diseases in the lungs. So where are we up to with this program? On the next slide, we've completed a phase 1 program with an intravenous version of AD214, and this demonstrated that the drug was well tolerated and we bound to the target receptor, which we call CXCR4, in ways that encourage us that we can have a therapeutic impact. So this drug will be ready to move into phase 2. Our next material will only be available for phase 2 in the middle of 2023, and this is driven by COVID delays in supply chains for biologic drugs globally. So we're taking this opportunity to leverage some additional information we got from some preclinical imaging that showed that the bioavailability, i.e. the amount of drug that's available to the lungs of patients when administered intravenously, wasn't where we wanted it to be. We had a lot of it ending up in the liver. And so what we're now doing is developing an inhaled version of AD214 for lung fibrosis. We're considering an intravitreal injection for eye fibrosis, and we're continuing to work to improve the IV formulation for other indications such as kidney. And that's the work that we're really focused on at the moment, so that we go into phase 2 with a more convenient patient formulation of the drug that's a much lower cost of goods going forward, a much better product than we would have had if we continued with the IV version. On the next slide, you can see the initial results from the inhalation development studies. This is really the first key step, was to show that our drug could survive the process of turning it into an aerosol, which we have done, and more importantly, that we can make aerosol particles at sufficiently small size to get to the bottom and the far regions of the lungs, which is what's really important for treating idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And we now know that we can get simulations show we can get 17 to 46% of our delivered dose deposited in those far reaches of the lungs. We embarked on this program thinking 10% would be where we'd end up, and so this is a way better outcome than we'd initially modeled and expected. So this is great news. I'll talk about the next steps for AD214 later on, but I just want to reiterate that it's not just about lung fibrosis here. There are multiple multi-billion-dollar markets where fibrotic disease continues to be the largest unmet need, and they continues to be a big driver of progression. We're particularly interested in eye and kidney fibrosis, and we're doing some work on cancer as well at the moment. So we can move on to the next slide. I'm going to switch gears and talk about our CAR-T program briefly. For a recap for people who aren't familiar with this, cancer is really good at hiding from our immune system. So what we're doing with CAR-T cell therapy is removing cells from your immune system, genetically modifying them in the lab to be able to target the cancer by engineering in what's called a chimeric antigen receptor, or CAR molecule. They're expanded in the lab and given back to the patient. And now your immune system can go find cancer. We've given you a living drug, single dose, that can continue to survive and hunt down cancer forever. The first drugs were approved in 2017 for blood cancers, and this is projected to be a $20 billion market. The challenge for CAR-T therapies is translating the blood cancer successes to solid tumours, and this is what we're trying to do with our collaboration with Karuna Biotech. And what we're doing is putting antibodies that can bind to unique targets on cancer that traditional antibodies haven't been able to, and combining them in a way that we can hit multiple targets at once with cancer, what's called bispecifics. And that enables us to then target cancer more specifically and have a better shot at dealing with solid tumours without off-target side effects. The next slide shows the first experimental data showing that we can actually put an iBody into a CAR-T cell. We can achieve all our collaboration partner Karuna's manufacturing expectations, and we've ended up with cells that can kill 2 different colorectal cancer cell lines, the left and the middle panel, and can also have a crack at a brain cancer cell line on the right panel. The purple lines are all our iBody-enabled CAR-T cells. The green ones are the T cells that haven't been modified to treat cancer. So this has given us great encouragement to move forward, and we're now working on our first target together, which we've just announced with Karina. Moving on to the next slide, these are our goals going forward. So for this year, it's all about those 3 programs that are most active at the moment. AD214, we've got a lot of milestones coming every quarter on the development of the inhaled formulation. And as we hit each one of those milestones, stability we've already hit, efficacy is ongoing at the moment in mouse models. Then we're doing dosing and distribution. Each of those milestones increases the attractiveness of this asset to partners. We've got a number of pharmaceutical companies looking at this asset, and we're hoping that as those data points come through in the next 1, 2, 3 quarters, that the partnering interest will ramp up and certainly accelerate those existing conversations. With GE Healthcare, the big milestone coming up is what we call preclinical proof of concept. This will be the ability to image granzyme B or an enzyme in mice that have been treated with immuno-oncology drugs. With Karina, we expect to get the first experimental results showing cell killing capability from our first target and to commence work on our second target as part of that collaboration. Remembering this is about a 5-target deal. And then we've got additional milestones around our internal pipeline development and investment in our platform. The next slide provides a little bit of a corporate snapshot. Tim covered this at the beginning, but about 25 million market cap today. The move to inhaled, while we see that as being absolutely important to providing a better outcome, did create a little bit of a surprise for some of our shareholders, which led to the share reduction in July. I would reiterate, we have a safe drug. It's ready for phase 2. We're going into phase 2 with a more superior formulation. And the final slide really is just to recap. Our iBody platform is capable of creating multiple sources of value, multiple assets over time. We have 4 assets in the pipeline already, ranging from clinical stage to discovery. We've got a clear picture to continue to expand that. The team is great. We haven't talked about them today, but we have a growing team driving the discovery process, and we've got a pretty clear news flow coming forward, so you can see us delivering on that plan. We look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thanks, Tim. I see you've got a very significant shareholder there in Platinum Asset Management. That'll be their healthcare fund. And now this is a complicated space for retail investors to understand. What are some of the short-term focuses or short-term milestones they should focus on?
So with AD214, which is our lead product, the next one to come will be, can we demonstrate that the inhalation of AD214 is effective in an animal model of lung fibrosis? We're working on a mouse model at the moment, and we have plans on a larger animal model as well, which may be more sensitive if we need it. So that's the next one coming up. And then after that, we're looking at imaging and distribution just to see how long does the drug stay in the lungs, which helps us define a dose for phase 2. So all of that's in the next half.
And the milestones that Big Pharma are looking at from AdAlta?
Yeah, so they wanted to see safety from phase 1, which we've now got. They're looking for exactly those same 2 milestones. So they're very interested. They believe if we can de-risk the program by demonstrating that we can get the drug where we need to and it's effective in the animal models, we've already demonstrated efficacy if we can get it to the right place. They know the drug is safe. That really starts to pique their interest. And we have a lot of interest, not just with global pharma, but also in regional pharma companies out of China who could become co-development partners and help us with non-dilutive funding for the overall phase 2 program.
And for a biotech company such as yourself, funding is always an issue. Can you talk through your capital position at the moment?
Yeah, so we had just over 6 million in the bank at the 30th of November. We raised 3.75 million going into Christmas. Our 4C will come out probably early next week, so I'll give you a complete update. But we've got in the vicinity of 10 million in the bank at the moment. We burn about 2 million a quarter. So that gives us room to get through those key milestones in the next 6 months and have strategic flexibility to not be pressured to do a deal, a capital raise or anything else immediately after that. So I think we're in really good shape at the moment from a funding of the core programs. We'd obviously like to be able to expand, but we want to do that off the back of a position of strength, not a position of where we are at the moment.